Bill, first and foremost, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to even come on. We really, really appreciate it so much.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, let me kick off. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GRC Regenerative Iteration meeting. The whole purpose of this meeting is really to experiment on how we can perform regenerative case studies. And the idea then is to look at some of the regenerative solutions that are around the world and give feedback and say, hey, in a perfect world, or if this solution was to be to go back out to somewhere else, this is what we would like to see on it, or these are the kind of improvements. So just to give Bill a little bit of a background and some of the other guests that haven't been here before. So typically, Bill, the way I've been structuring this, can you guys see my screen?
Yep. Can now.
Is
Yeah.
is I bring everyone. Well, right now I've set up some conversations or basically some projects, and throughout the course of the meeting, I've been iterating on how we look at it. And as of right now, we have sort of two things that we do within this hour. Is we really look at it and say, hey, that based on this project, what's really different about it? What's unique? What do we like about it? What makes it great? And then how would we iterate it? So this is the series that we're trying to put together, and the whole idea is to take GRC from a lot of theoretical knowledge and really try to get it down to applied iteration on how we would see projects. Well, the more we're going through this and sort of iterating, David said, hey, it'd be great to get some feedback who's been doing regenerative iteration and analysis on case studies. And it was you, Mr. Reed. So we're so happy to have you here. I'm iterating through this still, and we don't know what the final system of this will be. But again, the whole idea is to bring some kind of commons and lessons learned into GRC based on how we're learning as a collective and the values that we have as we're looking at different projects. So with that, Bill, now you have a little bit of a background. We'd love to, for those of us who don't know you, to learn a little bit more about you, if you don't mind introducing yourself to all of us.
Oh, well, how do I make this succinct and meaningful? I'm an architect. I call myself a recovering architect, and I'm an architect and planner by training. Always interested in how do we improve the quality of life in our places. That's has driven me since I was a little kid, actually. Um, So my life's been a journey, and we're still trying to figure this out, right, Sage? Nobody has an answer here. I started in the early when I realized that planning had no purpose. I just hung out in the architecture world because became an architect and then a planner. Planning had no sense to me because until the sustainability movement came along, and then I said, this is the important point about planning. In the meantime, I was doing energy efficiency, one of the early passive solar pioneers, and that led to the U.S. Green Building Council, one of the co-founders of the LEED rating system. And even when we developed that, we knew that it was not, it was just a fragment. It was never about, by the way, it was never meant to define sustainability, never. And this is what the USGBC is now claiming. All of the LEED building rating system it's a market transformation tool to lead people to do better performing structures that may lead us towards a sustainable condition. But that's too much of a mouthful for most people, so we just call it sustainable. And by the way, no building can be sustainable and no building can be regenerative. So that's another thing we'll talk about today, I hope. I'm giving both a lecture and an introduction, so I'll just jump ahead. From there, we went to integrative systems thinking, well, if you got all these points that lead, how do you work them as a whole? And the question that emerged from that is, where does one stop integrating? And if you think deeply enough about it, you realize that's a metaphysical question. And that led me to Regenesis was founded in 1995. They heard me give a talk just on this subject. They invited me along and said, you might like what we're doing. And indeed I did. And so I've been working with the crew at Regenesis now for the last 30 years, trying to put this work into practice. Okay, I'm done.
All right. So, guys, Bill made it very clear that he doesn't want to come on and just sort of verbal vomit to everyone as a group. He wanted to make this interactive. So I just put a Q in chat to start adding your questions here. As you guys are adding questions to this, I've already built a list of 10 questions that I'm going to also put in chat as well. And then we're not going to go through all of it. We're just going to look at the top questions we want to ask on here, and we will start. So, Bill, first question I have is regenerative reflection and sort of seeing differently. What do you listen to, or how do you assess initial projects, whether it's truly working in regenerative ways or sustainable ways?
Yeah, good. Um, yeah, no one. I don't think I've ever met anyone who really understands even sustainability um, when we first meet them. So no one is. We don't exclude anybody, but what we want is people who are curious more than anything, and people who have a question. And so we start out. I put a provocation out to most of our clients, developer clients, architect clients, engineer clients, who say I basically say, when you're working regeneratively or sustainable, whatever word you want to use, you can call it Fred, it doesn't really matter. But when you're working for the service of life, your project is not the project. The project is life. That's what we should be working on and how we interact with life. Your project will emerge from that. So this is not about putting the project first and then somehow fitting it into the way life might want to work. This is actually favoring life as as a way to inform the nature of our project. The one thing that we say to our clients is we believe that humans have a right to live here. We believe that humans are part of nature. We've forgotten that, and that human habitation needs to be harmonized with life. So we tell developers, we're not here to take away your profit. In fact, we will protect your profit, but we are not going to protect your project. Your project will be likely entirely different than what you are assuming from this. So if you're game, we believe that we can figure that out with you, and most people are game. So there we are. Some people aren't, and we shake hands and walk away.
That's great. Thank you. Next question in this, and I'm going to move to Nikki's after this. How do you help a team or a place surface its potential and not just look at what they give you as they think their initial goals?
Yeah, that's so we developed what we call a story of place process because complexity is communicated through story. And the reason for a story is not a narrative. Just to give you a little bit of a preamble here, a story is not a narrative. It's not a history of dates and all that, although that's part of it. A story is really conveying the essence nature of a place. So what we're looking for, to get a little more esoteric, is the essence of a place. It's sociological, economic, psychological, cultural, obviously environmental issues. Those energies form a place. And the way we hold a whole is through its essence, its intrinsic nature, its potential. Because living systems always have potential. They always look forward, they never look backwards. So we're looking for the potential of this system as a co-evolutionary engagement with the people of that place. And to make it simple, basically we have discussions. We have small kitchen table conversations with people. We're sharing with them what we're learning about the patterns of life in this place. They're sharing what are obviously they live there, that we don't. They're sharing with us perspective. And we're developing a collaborative understanding of how life wants to work here. That's the starting point. Is how life wants to work. And I know I'm being actually pretty short. I'm shortchanging the answers just to you guys can stop me and have me expand if you wish, but I'm just trying to give you a framework.
No, I think that was great. I think that's great. Give me one second. Nikki has a question here. So this might be a little bit of a rabbit hole. So as an architect, what's your opinion on the sustainability level of moving to bamboo, hempcrete, and those type of alternative building solutions or home building? And which method is the most sustainable, do you feel is the best as we move forward?
Okay, good. Well, first of all, none of them are sustainable. None of them by themselves sustain life. So they are They are green technologies that have a tendency to lead us towards a sustainable condition. That's the best that we could say about any of these. Um, so which are better? Well, that's context specific. This is why we do life cycle analysis. And are you familiar with my the graph that we had, the red to the green, the degenerating to the regenerating condition? If you're not familiar with that, maybe that's worth um, taking a quick.
I am, but I don't have it at my fingertips. So if someone can find it, I imagine we have a lot of people might have some of those. They can put that in chat. But please speak to it though. We'll catch up with it.
Okay, I could find it myself, but okay, I'll speak to it. So
Okay.
anyway, as long as that question, Nikki, is still working in the degenerative stage, because none of those are life producing. Those are still life. That the best you could say is that maybe they're close to neutral. This is why the building itself is never regenerative or sustainable. It's the system of life and our interactions with each other and the relationships to the living systems that support our lives. That's what we're working on. The building is an excuse. It's an opportunity. It's an acupuncture point to engage it. And then reflexively from that understanding, we work backwards and say, well, is hempcrete the best or is wood the best? Um, that was my world 30 years ago. I'm really not that much part of it right now because, well, I can only do so much. So I leave it to you guys to make those LCA decisions these days. I'm a big fan
Thank
of
you.
hempcrete, and we actually have a company we're working with right now, but that's a personal opinion, and it's, again, generic thought, not specific.
I'm a
That's
fan
great.
of it too, so thank you. I was just curious because I live down here in Costa Rica and there's a lot of bamboo structures going up, but also some people in the drier areas trying hempcrete. So, yeah, thank you.
Where are you in Costa Rica, Nikki? Because I'm down there a lot.
I'm in the Southern Pacific area in the Baru region, and to be a little bit more specific, I'm living in Bahia Bilena in Ubita
Good. Well,
in a
I'm
permaculture community.
I'm in Hatillo, which is just north of Dominical.
Ah, awesome.
Yeah, maybe see you sometime. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Thank you so much, guys. Next question is from Dennis. So Dennis asked a question, who speaks for the trees? Are they qualified? Is it a power trap? So I think that's when we're looking at sort of the ecosystem and when you come in to evaluate, the place, I should say.
Is it a power trap? That's an interesting term. What does that mean? Is it a power trap?
Dennis, you want to expand?
Yeah. So if you're the person saying nature wants this, you become an authority guiding the whole entire project, right? So you could say anything you want and just make up shit,
True.
right?
Yeah, well, and to some degree, we are all guilty of that, whether we think we're on a power trip or not, because how do we know we're right? And that's we certainly do put on the hat of speaking for nature because no one else is typically in the projects we're working on. And we also say, but don't believe us. We have to test this out over time. And this gets to the nature of regeneration. What we are regenerating is understanding based on, let's just say, a year-to-year cycle. Did we make a mistake in assuming this or not? Evaluate it, benchmark it, move ahead. So the regeneration is a much more complex form of adaptive management, but primarily it requires the deliverable for regeneration is not a project. It's building the capacity and capability for that community to co-evolve with life. That's regeneration. And any project that claims to be a regenerative project, I would hope that they're actually speaking metaphorically that the project itself is not regenerative. It's the nature of relationships that you developed and capability that you helped develop through that project. So this is a much deeper dive. We basically end up working for projects that are serious about this for 4 to 5 years because that's how long it takes to build the capacity in a community to work and govern themselves in this aspirational way.
I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Pam had a question. Pam, I'm going to ask one more on this other master before I come into yours. Bill, I got a good one for you here. What would you want to see more of and how we reflect on regenerative projects, especially across communities or sectors?
What would we want to see? Well, I kind of gave my big answer just a second ago, but what would I want to see? Well, I would love to see our whole community speaking about regeneration as a continual process of coevolution. And I'm just going to use kind of a brutal example, but maybe the metaphor works, is that if I'm in a relationship, in a couple relationship, and I have an incredibly vitriolic argument with my partner, I have probably screwed that relationship up forever. I've somehow destabilized it. So can you restore that relationship to that condition it was before that argument? Probably not. But you can regenerate it if both of you choose to. And that regeneration takes work. So that's really what we're doing now, is that we are regenerating our relationship with each other, the human to human relationship and human to nature relationship, because both of those dimensions are essential to develop this way of being that is necessary for planetary health and our health.
To
Does that
summarize what you said there, you really are hinting at regeneration isn't about what we're doing necessarily as the action, but necessarily the space that we create. So then we can work on those relationships with that ecosystem.
Yep.
I love that.
This is about being and becoming. So Maturana, I'm grossly paraphrasing, but basically defined life as life is the process of becoming. Life is participating in evolutionary processes. That's the best definition I've ever heard. And so regeneration is about building that capacity to participate in our evolutionary development, who I am as a person. And let me just make it simple and not so abstract. If I'm a jerk or if I'm an asshole, which I certainly have been known to have been and be occasionally, I hope it's occasional, is that I am not going to be very effective in working with a group of people. And groups of people, teams, organizations, that's how we get stuff done on this planet. Individuals don't really. So if I'm a jerk, I'm not going to be very effective working as a team. Therefore, the team is not going to be very effective working with the system that it's part of. So it cascades right down. We call it 3 lines of work at Regenesis, is that my development, the group's capability as an organism to develop, and the system we are supporting, we call it the system of life, or the community, all those are 3 developmental domains that are nested with one another and are need to be developed concurrently. So when we teach regeneration, we actually start with who you are in here, who you're becoming, your ability to reflect and self-observe, and then we self-remember where did I screw up? And that's what we do with communities too. We don't try to teach them to be different. We just tell them, please reflect on who you are and who you need to be. And we occasionally just call them out to reflect. We don't judge them, just who do you need to be effective? And that continual, very gentle destabilization of a practice is what begins to transform communities.
I love that. I love that. Pam has a question here. I'm gonna take you back a little bit. When you were talking about your analysis of bioregions and you made a statement of how life wants to work here and trying to understand how life wants to work in this situation. Can you expand more on that, on how you really kind of evaluate that? Pam, is that taking in the right direction as far as how we look at that from like analytical? Is that how you're really looking for it?
Sure. I love that concept. The way I took it in is to place that ahead of everything else, is how does life want to work here, instead of wrangling with life to make it go in the direction we want in an area. And then specifically with the growing sort of mystique of bioregionalism as our solution. Wondering what your thoughts were.
Well, yeah, bioregionalism is currently the sexy
Right.
hang your hat on. I like it because it makes a lot of sense. People get the idea that this nature of Earth is different than that nature of Earth. So that translates. And so I'm happy for any kind of motivating perspective, but it's very difficult to work at a bioregional scale. This is what Eleanor Ostrom proved, that it works place And how you define place, the way we define place is how big is here. That's the way Helen and the two ecological artists just passed away recently. Helen and Norton. Doesn't matter. Anyway, how big is here is the question we extracted from them.
Carol
And
Stanford.
what's that?
Carol Stanford.
No. Carol's one of my mentors. Helen and Norton something or other. But they did ecological, large, massive ecological installations all over the world. How does Europe work? How does the Mississippi Delta Basin work? That kind of thing. But the way we manage bioregions is place by place. Those are the nodes in a bioregion that's the node of governance in a bioregion. And I think that's not being expressed often enough. That place is still the operative vessel or unit of scale, appropriate scale. And no, I'll take Eleanor Ostrom's. She won a Nobel Prize for it, so I think she has some credibility in making that statement. I don't know if that helps.
Well, it's the concept of how does life want to be here?
That question.
That's what is the most interesting.
Okay, so let me use an analogy that I use. And I see David Leventhal joined us. Hey, David.
Hey, Bill. Good morning.
Good morning. So the analogy that I use, and sorry if those of you who heard it, if I want to get let's talk about working with wholes, first of all. We're not talking about working with pieces and parts. We're talking about with whole systems. What's a whole system? So Carol Sanford's definition of a whole is anything that is singular, alive, and evolving. So Pam, you're singular. Me too. We all are. Our families are a singular entity. Our organizations are a singular entity. A city is a singular entity. And by the way, the bacteria in your gut is a singular entity. And basically the way life works is that we have to add value to those wholes. So to support evolution, you're supporting the bacteria in your gut, even though they have nothing to do with they help your life, but they're independent. It's an independent universe in your gut. We are independent universes in ourselves, right? But then we're united in a family and then a neighborhood, a watershed. So how do we understand these wholes? We typically divide them up into lots of pieces. And in the context of architecture and city planning or urbanism or even ecology, we want habitat connectivity, we want gender equity, we want environmental justice, we want to avoid beach dune erosion. We talk about mobility and security and water pollution. And we put all of these worries or parts or pieces into a vessel and we stir them around. Now, and somehow we think that we're working with a whole system, or even more obvious, we put them in a big circle and we put them in pie shapes, right? And we call it, because it's in a circle, we call it a whole, but it really isn't. It's just a bunch of lists of pieces in a circle. So let's get back to you, Pam. If I want to get to know Pam, the way a whole works, I do not get to know you through taking your liver and kidneys and skeletal structure and DNA sequencing, put it in a pot and stir it around. That doesn't give me Pam. And in fact, we don't know what gives us Pam. That's the mystery. We don't. But we know it works. So there's some spirit, consciousness, whatever, that we know as the real operative characteristic of life. How do we get to know that spirit consciousness? The way we get to know that is through, or whether it's a place, we get to know that through the patterns of life. So I get to know you, Pam, by observing how you are interacting with your partner, your kids, your parents, your dog, us on the screen, how you're interacting. Those are invisible, but those are energies. They tell me more about Pam than any of those pieces. So that's a long way of saying is that patterns tell us more about entities than the hard stuff of material.
Okay. So familiarizing ourselves with the natural rhythms of a place.
That's right. What formed this place? Why did people live here? What by the way, always start with geology. You cannot escape geology, and you think you can, but you can't.
Yeah.
And I can give examples all over the world about that. That when you start getting to understand the way the geology formed this place, it actually forms you. And some fun stories, if we have the time, I'll share a few. But so geology, then water, then habitat, then culture, then economics and business and farming, and where does the food come from, and why are people attracted here? Those are patterns that begin to give us this essence understanding. Okay, I think that's enough. Sure.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Pam, you feel good on that one? You got, okay, awesome. Okay, David actually had a question next year. Can you talk about your milestones over the next 30 years? Excuse me, I'm sorry, the screen just shifted on me. As your thinking has evolved, are there significant epiphanies that has stood out? So over the last 30 years, not the next 30 years, excuse me, but the last 30 years of doing this, how has your thinking evolved, and what epiphanies have you really had that have maybe surprised you or stood out? Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of did it in the bio, Bill, I guess I was thinking, but it feels to me like you've had to shift lenses multiple times. And I feel like it's really interesting to hear this path.
I just shifted lenses a couple months ago too, which I'm really pleased and excited about. But the biggest shift for me was 10 years into this practice, when I realized it was about my development here that was more important than anything out there. And that allowed me to become a different practitioner. And I observed one of my colleagues, Ben Haggard, who some of you may know, in South Africa at a vitriolic meeting. And Ben just sat back against it with his back to the blackboard. It was an old classroom we were meeting in. And with a Cheshire cat grin on his face, while everybody was stirring themselves into a froth of anger and frustration. And he removed himself from it and just became an energetic presence of calm. And ultimately, that just calmed everybody down. He smiled, and the group went on, and it basically without saying anything, the vitriol went away. So, whoa, that's pretty amazing. So what it taught me is that how we hold ourselves and the energy that we hold ourselves in actually can do so much more than anything we say. And so carrying that, I asked many practitioners, is that imagine think about a few projects in your experience. And a project, by the way, is anything with a beginning and a middle and an end. It could be making Thanksgiving dinner. It could be working on a $10 billion wastewater treatment plant. It doesn't matter. Think about these projects. Think about a couple that were agonizing experiences and others that were fulfilling. And what made the difference? And what makes the difference? Nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with money. It has everything to how we are in relationship with each other, how we choose to have common purpose and respect for each other. This kind of thing. You can fill flip chart pages of this being state. So that's a phenomenal that's the gigantic aha for me. Before that, it was just honoring life, realizing that the building has nothing to do with life. We're working with life. That was the first one. Let me hear. Then this eternal perspective. But just a couple of months ago, I've been studying Dr. Ibrahim Karim's work on biogeometry, and he made a really interesting point that I always have struggled with, and I finally got it. Is that we use frameworks. Bucky Fuller uses geometries. J.G. Bennett uses prime numbers. And I never quite understood why. Plato, the Greeks, numbers, geometries to actually frame life. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Is math or information really the cause of life? Well, Karim was talking about, and this is, maybe I'm getting way too much into the weeds here, but I'll keep going for a moment, is when we work with numbers in terms of quantitative, the nature of quantities, one number replaces another. 9 is better than 7 because it's bigger in this whatever particular case. And so it replaces. It's kind of a zero-sum game. One replaces the other. It's analytical, it's informational, it's quantitative. But if we go to the qualitative side of numbers, the right brain side, that's left brain previously, the right brain side of wholeness, numbers have a quality. And I've heard this said, I've read books about it, but it never registered with me until 2 months ago that the quality of numbers, so the quality of the number 18 has a different nature of energy than the number 8. Now, I can't explain why, but if you actually sit with that a while, you'll learn what the mystics learn, that in fact that they do. And that quality, when you start looking at the quality of relationships between numbers and the magic of math and harmonic relationships, you realize that the numbers are communicating at an entirely different level. They're communicating energies. And when we work with, so when we hit a resonance with a number, that resonance, like a tuning fork, goes to infinity. It keeps repeating. And this, for me, explains the nature of field building, because what we're doing with regeneration is we're delivering a field of energy that communities and nature pick up on, or we receive that communication. Those energies go to infinity. And basically, this means I'm trying to make sense of something that's going to sound way too abstract, but when we work with resonance, when we work with quality, when we work with frequency, whether it's color frequency, sound frequency, or shape frequency, we actually can leverage energies much more powerfully than ever before. Now, we work with those energies indirectly through framework thinking, and Bucky Fuller did too. The Greeks did too, but I never really understood the rationale behind it. Now I'm kind of off to a new exploration of depth that I've never experienced before. So I'm having really fun with that. Anyway, I probably left you all in the dust on that one. My apologies, but hopefully it's something
Not
stuck.
exactly. No, I think this is it. The energies and the way energies work is really what we need to be tuning into so that we can make real change.
Yeah. I'll give an example. Dave, I see David just asked about giving an example. I don't have a lot, so all I can do is I've spent hours listening to Cream's work and reading. Is that what? But he explained one example in I guess this is a town of Hamburg, Switzerland, that he was asked to come in on because he's primarily, even though he's Egyptian, he's primarily educated in Switzerland, in Zurich. But the 5G, anyway, all the electronics were really disturbing the health of one city in particular because of the nature of the valley it was in. And by actually identifying, um, by creating compensating shape frequencies, by basically putting a right angle piece of geometry on the sending device, the antenna, the radar, whatever the antenna, he was able to dampen the frequencies by some significant amount. So he basically reduced the medical emergency by 60%, depending on the illnesses. And he was asked to do that in another city too. So basically, he's done it twice now. Is that proving anything? I don't know. Go check it out. But all I know is that it resonates with me, and that I'm game to explore more. I think we have so we are so naive. We are so dumb, really. There's so much out there that we don't know. Um, I don't know. We're dumb. There's so. I just heard the scientists now, the last 20 years, are now exploring how Let me tell another story. Sorry, I'm just going to go on a ramble here, guys. Stop. Give me the hook, Sage or David. If
I'll give you one more minute. I got to move on to the next one to make sure I get through some of these. So go ahead.
okay. Yeah, well, Galileo. There's a book called Galileo's Arrow by Philip Goff, philosopher from Cambridge, and Galileo made the conscious decision back in the 1500s or whenever, or 1400s, that consciousness couldn't be measured because we are conscious. We can't measure ourselves, but we can measure speed, time, distance, relationship. All physics and all chemistry are about the relationships between entities, not the entities themselves. Meaning, this is why essence is so important, is actually understanding the nature of the entity itself. Now philosophers realize, and Galileo realized, this is screwed up. I don't know what to do about consciousness. Now the philosophers and scientists are getting their handle on consciousness. And this is what we've been working with in terms of essence, and many philosophers have been working with essence for hundreds of years. But the way we work with the living entities is to understand their unique intrinsic nature or essence or their potential. And but a scientist named Ned Hoffman I heard a talk he gave, basically says is that space-time, this dimension that we exist in right now, really doesn't exist. Consciousness is what exists. And space-time is actually a lens that we put over our minds just so we can actually deal with it, with life, this temporary existence of life. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. I have no proof, but it makes a lot of sense. But the point of this is that really what we're working with is consciousness, essence, and potential are the doorways into that arena. And that's what we need to be paying attention to. Okay, Sage, back to you.
That was the best summary at the end of that. That was awesome. Way to tie that back in. Okay, so Carl had a question here. I really want to make sure I don't miss this. He was asking about the biotic pump. Sorry, Carl, I'm trying to go back in here and find your question. So what are your thoughts on developing thinking about the biotic pump and the potential to cool the planet by restoring the water cycles and restoring soil to sustainable life or to sustain life?
Sign me up. That sounds right to me. I've spent a fair amount of time with, who's the Australian guy? I spend a fair amount of time and then I draw a blank.
Bill Mollison?
What's that?
Bill Mollison, permaculture?
No, this is a guy. He's an older man now, but he's probably one of the biggest advocates for what you're asking, Carl. Yeah, I mean, it seems absurdly obvious when you look at the evidence that that's gigantic. Yeah, I mean, even though carbon is the source, the real greenhouse gas is water. And
I think there's just so much more potential agency for us to do something to have an impact than this abstract counting of carbon.
Absolutely. And yeah, no, this is the agency is that's the magic word, Carl, is that really what we're trying to build in communities and people are agency to heal the earth from their place. We can't heal the earth. It's too big, it's too abstract. There's no CEO in charge, but we can heal the earth place by place. And I have a little conceit that there's 4,038 cities on the planet, 4,037 cities on the planet larger than 100,000 people. If we get a 3.5% tipping point, that's 141 cities. If we get this work done in 141 cities, it will then, if you believe in the 100th monkey kind of thing, it will then cascade through the planet. So I don't think it's too absurd to think that this is an impossible venture, but we need to focus on the real stuff. And carbon is an abstract phenomenon; it's not real. And just trying to reduce it, you can see how successful that's been. But the problem is that we're fragmenting the Earth into problems, and that's the killer. Because when you try to solve one problem, you end up with unexpected consequences in other areas. And so this is why working with whole systems is so important. This is why working with essence is so important. Okay, I'll stop.
I can't help myself, but I'm practicing architect, but so many of the practices or technologies incorporated by our building systems is we solve one, we trying to solve one problem at a time, and because we don't look at the whole system, we create more problems than we solve.
Absolutely. Look at the environmental movement. It's been active for about 50 years now. How's the planet doing? A lot worse. So we're doing something wrong. Yes, there's points of light all over. By the way, at the other side of it, there's hundreds of thousands of points of light. The problem is we aren't integrating those points of light. Our egos still get in the way. Our communication processes still get in the way. So this is really, when we work in cities and communities, one of our major processes is just getting people around the table to talk with each other, activist groups, neighborhoods, to talk with each other in service of potential, in service of the potential that they can all agree on. It's like magic. And if you can practice this, because it's not a deliverable, it's not an episode, it's a continual practice every month, every 6 weeks, getting people together to collaboratively learn and act, it's magical how powerful that is.
If I can insert one little bit more commentary, low E glass, which is one of the technologies to help reduce the energy of our buildings, which allows architects to say my building is better because it's using less energy.
Right.
We don't know that heat doesn't disappear, it does other things. And what low E glass does is it's known to melt the siding of neighboring houses, start fires, melt plastic lawn furniture, and it only lasts for 10 to 15 years. So it's, I think, ecologically over the time, it's such a disaster.
But this is why I don't pay a whole lot of attention to building materials now as an issue. I'm glad people are doing it. I'm glad people have their particular bias and approach, because we need everybody doing whatever energizes them, filling their unique ecological niche. But we need more integrators out there doing this work.
So the next one with that then is the next question from our list of top 10 is, how do you think regenerative work should engage with ownership, particularly in the terms of equity, structure, and agency?
Well, I'm a bit of a pragmatist, and I'm an idealistic pragmatist. I like to qualify that, but you know, you got a real estate deal. The real estate deal has to work. Speaking from an architect and developer's perspective, it's a real estate deal, and it has to have a return on investment. If it doesn't, it's a bad project. Now, can you actually do this work in concert with a real estate investment? Absolutely. It gets better. Our average, by the way, our average in terms of time to market, in terms of land use approvals, is 18 months faster than competition who are hiring a bunch of lawyers to piss on each other.
Really?
So you do not lose money doing this work. The only way you lose money is by bolting on technologies that may or may not have sense. Like Carl, your point about low E glass. Is it really necessary? Good idea, maybe, depending on the place. Okay, I don't know if I've answered the question, Sage.
Oh, that was great. When you are doing place-based evaluations, what kind of steps do you ensure you don't have macro fallout?
Macro fallout?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times what we see is, like for instance, Nikki loves to talk about the Poverty Inc., where we look at a lot of the NGOs and sort of their mission, and that's a very nuanced, situation there. But overall, when you're looking at place-based solutions, how do you ensure that you don't have that negative fallout in that surrounding community outside of whatever you're defining as that place?
Yeah. Well, great question. And the way we do that is by bringing in as many people who are interested to participate in the co-creative process, because that's what we're doing. We're bringing people. We look at the potential of a system this big. I mean, let's say 20 to 30 kilometers outside, just to throw out a number, and everybody's in that bucket. Do you want to play or not? Most people don't want to play. We're busy. Our egos get in the way. I want to protect my funding sources. I don't want to give that funding source to her because I got the funding from that source. So that's the big danger. Once we start with building this field of cooperation from those people who do want to come in and collaborate, it builds a field. Getting back to this whole idea of field building and resonance, because what happens in a community is These developers are different. They're actually talking about the health of our system, not their project. That's novel. And they ask about the nature of who we are. Well, we could use your help to helping these guys understand that, because we want to make this place better than, because they're really working on the place. So it attracts others and it builds others. It's so amazing that people who reject us when we first come into a community a year later saying we want to play. So it's building this field of cooperative, positive energy that's and I do use that word energy very literally. It's an energetic thing
Yeah. Hey,
that
Bill, you
people.
sound like Alan Savory to me. I'm here in
Yeah,
business management. Are you familiar with that? Or you work with
of
Alan?
course. Oh, yes, I know Alan and know his work.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're not the only ones talking about this. That's the point.
Fantastic. That's good.
And so uh, where was I going? Redirect me.
That's
I
fine.
just lost.
I got a follow on for that though. So we're talking about macro implications, or at least like
Oh, yeah.
fallout, and right, you're talking about creating that resonance field, so you don't necessarily have that. Go ahead.
Well, and if there is falling out, we say, well, come on board. We want to hear your point of view. I mean, it's not like we are trying to avoid people. We go out there, we spread the word, we show up. We show up for years, actually. Shame on you if you don't want to. And it's so it's an open invitation, and we love having restraint. We love having people who are pissed off, frankly, because that's a force of creativity. What we run away from, because and we have actually, is apathy. Whatever. Do whatever you want, knock yourself out. That community is a dead community. Hopefully, we can stir them up by destabilizing them some way or by offering them some kind of idea of potential. But if that doesn't work, there's really not much hope of working. Hope that helps.
No, that was great. I have a question from Catherine, but I'm going to ask one more just real quick before we get into that one. What are some of the critical conditions needed to build regenerative collaboration between cities, anchor institutions, space in general? What are those critical conditions that you try to set and or build?
Well, we always start with potential, because that's something, people are usually trying to do problem solving. Flipping that into potential is the most powerful perspective. And then we basically invite people. We 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 have found that one of the questions people ask is, and I don't know if this is directly related, but how do you include everybody? How do you become inclusive in a city? We don't even try, because all we need to get is 15 to 20 different groups of people. And by the way, we've learned everything we need to learn, because once you're at 15 to 20 groups of people or small groups of people, institutions, could be the mayor, could be a banker, could be a chamber of commerce ED, could be Aunt M down the street. It doesn't matter. We've actually learned all that we can learn. The patterns are, then we start hearing the same stories. Now what's of interest is we can create a coherent story and potential from that. Now we just want to engage as many people as possible, and we invite them to show up. Many clients, though, will have political touch points that really need to be done. If we don't talk to that person, they're going to be angry and be a bad actor, as somebody just asked. So we definitely try to reach out to those people that the client feels are truly important, in addition to these 15 or 20 arbitrary sources of perspective. I keep finding myself going down rabbit holes and not sure how to extricate myself into
No, you're
making.
doing awesome. You're doing great. You're doing wonderful. For the purpose of time, for everyone, we have about 10 minutes left, and I have two community questions, and I have one final question I'd like to ask as well. So just so everyone knows, we're at about our final 10 minutes here. So first one's from Catherine. Catherine's thinking from a governance perspective, and she's heard two structures, reflection, and the second escapes me. Are there others? So um, Catherine, you want to explain a little more about what you're looking for?
Catherine here.
Catherine, are you there? Okay, I'm going to move on to Dennis first, and then we'll come back to Catherine. So Dennis asked a question: how do you handle bad actors? Example strategies and tactics. So what are some of the strategies and tactics when you do experience bad actors?
Well, there's always bad actors. And if you were working with the rest of the community in this coherent, meaningful, exploratory way, and they are finding resonance with what you're doing, they take care of the bad actor. We don't have to. They basically say, "Would you go away? We're having fun here. Don't." So we really don't have to do much. I'm trying to think if we've ever had to be a real police, and I can't recall. I might be delusional, but right now I'm not calling not thinking of any situation.
That makes sense.
This is a perfect segue into my question. So thank you. Sorry, I'm on the phone and it was hard to find the buttons. I'm hearing structures in what you're talking about, Bill, and reflection was one of them. And I think the story you told about stepping out and creating a space that allows people to settle instead of participating in anger and all of that is kind of another structure. So I'm just wondering what other sort of insights do you have to share around these very subtle ways of getting people to basically play well together, which for me is really what we're working at governance. That's really what we want.
Yeah.
And we have all these artificial ways of forcing people from the outside. But what you're really speaking, in my view, is an inside way of developing that. Am I?
Right. You are right. You're correct. And yeah, governance is the gigantic topic actually in this work. And but governance is a loaded word because we assume that it means some form of command and control or representative governance, or well, there's all sorts of forms of governance, of course. So what we are doing, the best governance is about building people's agency. And that means a mutual agency where I respect what your gifts are, you respect what my gifts are, and we honor and we attempt not to beat each other up, but we attempt to harmonize the way of perspective, which means that this gets right back to our inner development. So what we do in the other framework, if you will, of governance is to get people to reflect. If you observe that. And the other is to help people identify their essence. So they're actually working from essence and not some kind of strange personality that has developed over the years of bad teachers, bad parental upbringing, and bullies when we're kids that occlude what our core is. So getting back to essence is key. And let me speak to that a little bit. So we have people are proposing, social democracies and holacracies and well, there's hierarchical management, command and control management, and which is better? None of them are better unless we are honoring essence to essence relationship. That is what, and so, I mean, Carol Sanford and Pamela Mang and Charlie Crone, my mentors, they worked in very hierarchical corporations, and yet those divisions that they worked in ended up being the most visionary in terms of letting people become their own CEOs, just small trim tab adjustments in even the biggest hierarchical organizations. Of course, once those divisions, even though they were making lots of money and very successful from doing this, hit the board of directors, the board of directors said, "This is bullshit. We're in charge here." And they would shut those things down. So, but I raised that point is because I've seen holacracies and social democracies fail dramatically because they weren't honoring the essence of every individual. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. Catherine, you good? All right, I'm going to move on to the final question. So the final wrap-up question, and we have a follow-on for Rick. So if anyone wants to stay on for a few minutes afterwards, we can definitely. I think we'll have some
And
time.
by the way, I'm able to stay on for some minutes afterwards if you're interested.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Bill, for your grace there. So the wrap-up question then for us is, if you were to help us reimagine how we approach regenerative iteration as a learning community, as the GRC as a whole, what guidance would you offer all of us?
I would say, well, you probably should do what we've done at Regenesis, at least in the early years. We're kind of all networked out and floating around the world now, but we spent every week working on a real project, one of the projects that one of the partners, had, and we would reflect on our role, our being state of the organization, using framework thinking to help us actually, because what frameworks are good for is validating the intuitive, not just float around in intuition world, but actually be disciplined and robust in your thinking processes, thinking and feeling processes. So we call that developmental work, and reflecting on what's hooking you. Why are you angry right now? It's a mutual support network that I found invaluable in working with projects in early years when I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And by the way, I still don't know what the heck I'm doing. I mean, this is just a continual learning process. Is to be there for each other and be resources for one another. We call it resourcing instead of facilitating. And resourcing means we are helping you get back to source. We aren't giving you the answer, like I'm giving you lots of answers here. We're actually getting you to think into it in a way that actually causes you to reflect more deeply than perhaps you were willing to without being in this conversation. Not sure if that's useful for you, but
It's very useful. I love it. I love it.
Can you also give a plug
like
to
100 more questions. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
I was just Bill. Have you got a plug for the Regenerative Practitioner series, right? Is Sarah still here? Sarah, you actually did it, right?
Yeah, I should have done that. Yeah, here, let me just type in. Yeah, well, there's
I
lots
stuck
of
a link in the chat. I can put it up again, but
you?
but I haven't done it, so I don't know anything about it.
Oh, well, you should do it. People come away with it. It's much different than you can imagine. It is not just, it is a developmental process. It's actually teaching you, that's the website for the Institute, Regenerats. What we're working on is your capability to work with these frameworks in a way that help you. As Christopher Alexander says, frameworks help us validate the intuitive. And these frameworks are a rich resource to help people realize, to help actually people collaboratively think and work in a disciplined way to discover new thinking, new perspectives. It's not just doing good, as Carol talks about. Doing good sounds good, because sustainability movement is about arresting disorder, slowing down the damage. Then we talk about doing good, net positive. Well, net positive sounds good, except when it isn't. And when we are proposing our idealistic perspective on the world, like USAID did in Africa and World Bank did for many years, we impose North American values on Africa. That's a losing proposition. And so doing good actually can be a form of colonialism at its worst. It can be really good at its best. So what's the antidote to that? And that means that we work with the essence or potential or intrinsic nature of every living entity at place. And so this work comes back to essence. These frameworks help give us the discipline and structure to collaboratively evolve our thinking with each other and with our clients. That's the benefit.
Guys, it is on top of the hour here. I want to respect the time. I think there is going to be a little bit of a follow-on session for those of you who have to drop off. We really appreciate you coming today. the whole GRC group. We're trying to add iteration in this. We're trying to build a little bit of a common, so we start thinking about more practical programs and how we show up for those. So this was a wonderful session for us, Bill. Thank you so much for coming today. We truly appreciate you. We might invite you back because I think a lot of us are coming up with follow-on questions in like sort of real time here. So thank you so much. There's a follow-on question in chat for everyone. David, do you want to close us out before I go into the following question and we sort of extend this to whoever wants to stay?
No, I just keep it going. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks, Bill. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, so Rick asked a question in chat.
Awesome.
How might we use the human AI enablement, emancipatory and neo learning to move beyond facilitator-centered Sage on the stage, not me, the other Sage on the stage formats to learner-centered micro? You can read it in chat probably better than Rick, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah. I didn't even expect this to be read out. I don't recommend reading it out either, because we can have different levels of questions, and compounds questions are designed for slow thinking. Should not be read aloud. And so you need time to reflect, take it in, take a little bit more, take it more. The thing is, our reductionism restricts our questioning, our Socratic questioning. And the one thing AI enables us to do is that we can take compound questions and we can iterate inquiries surrounding that question. And you can also take a question such as that and you can lower it to a 12th or 6th grade reading level. So you can have different levels of explanatory methods of understanding depending upon people's, whether it's cognitive, integral thinking, whatever it is. So it makes the learning much more agile if we can develop the AI skills to be able to address compound questions, which in turn can help us work more effectively in dealing with wicked problems. And I concur, Bill, I came a bit late, but the idea that these problems are inseparable, it's a complex entanglement of problems. You cannot separate them. So you have to, as you well know, you have to go up to a meta level, what I call meta governance, to be able to begin to grapple with the complexities of unraveling our meta crisis and our poly crisis and mitigate and adapt to our poly collapse. So anyway, that's.
I use AI all the time, and for some quite complex questions, I find that it's inspirational and helpful, and also wrong, or at least misdirected.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But that doesn't matter because we are too. So, but the point is, it's a different. It's just like having a different being, a pretty darn smart being to offer perspective. And one of the things that I'm particularly fascinated to work on, we're working on a new social biocultural diversity metric system, which is an oxymoron because it can't be a metric system for culture. But nonetheless, one of the keys, though, is to understand place. We've spent decades learning how to actually see the patterns of life in a place. Most people in most communities don't have that skill, but AI is pretty darn good at it. It's not great at it, but it's pretty darn good at it. And I'm seeing AI as a real resource for these systems to help people understand those core patterns of what life in this place particularly wants to be, because it's drawing on all the historical work.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's pretty wild. I'm pretty excited about it, actually.
Well, the addition I would say is that everything you do has to be vetted, and it's better to be done in community, so that you develop micro dialogue sessions, which what I describe as micro dialogue sessions, where you take it and you take little pieces of it, and it really helps people to develop that, and they're not even aware they're doing it. It helps to develop their metacognition, how they think about thinking and learning how to learn. And I think we haven't developed we're still in the process of developing more sophisticated AI skills to do exactly that. And not only that, we have to do it at scale if we're going to have impact across different places.
And by the way, that this is where framework thinking come in, because the AI is using frameworks to actually answer.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can actually then practice and actually filter that work through frameworks and see how the AI is thinking, that's a real That's a boost in intelligence.
Well, it's amazing because then you can take the different frameworks and you can direct it to critique things by different frameworks, and so you can see what the outputs are. Because I'm framework agnostic. You know, all frameworks. It's like the map is not the territory, as you know. And so you need different maps that you can say, well, this one gives me this, you know, and that's where the generativity can come into play.
Yep.
Anyway, I've said enough.
Yep. Thanks. Appreciate it, Rick.
All right, guys.
Anything?
Anything else for Mr. Reed here before we call this closed? Alex, David, Dimitriar, Dr. Brian, Lynn, we haven't heard from you a little bit lately. So if you have any final questions or closeout or anything you want to add, by all means, you can come off the mute and please ask the group. Feel free.
All right. Well, I'll take that opener just to ask a quick question about the place fund. If Bill, if you could share anything about that, because I think a lot of us who are interested in projects as an architect, funding, you know, we're talking about governance as being one issue, funding, of course, being, you know, another major issue, and finding capital that's aligned to, say, Essence or, you know, some of the important goals of the project.
Yes, well, we are. I am cynical about impact investors because none of them are really, or none of them. That's a stretch, but very few. So they're still just anyway. The place fund. We actually could be hearing. We have it's a $200 million fund, and it looks like we may be funded. We certainly the loan papers have been written up. But there's pledge money because we're working through a DAF, a donor advisor fund structure, which is problematic in some ways and interesting in others. It's still a bit new, but Dave Lattiser, my smart partner, has in this work has his AI background, NASA rocket scientist kind of guy, real estate maven. He's proposing shifting into a REIT, which we had not done before. So we're not giving up yet, Alex. So stay tuned.
Okay, thanks.
Bill, could you share what contact information, LinkedIn or which I came in late, so you may have shared that earlier on, but if you're willing to share that.
Yeah, LinkedIn, you know, I seem to miss emails these days. I get so many, but let me.
What's the best way if we wanted to follow up?
Yeah, but try email, and then WhatsApp is actually the best way. And let me put my there's my email, and then my WhatsApp number is one.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Dr. Brian, you had come off the mute. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I think I'm curious about how to apply these principles locally, and I'm also wondering about well, I think I need another more context, so I'll come back, but I'm interested in any references and yeah, how we can apply these to our spatial projects and other projects.
Oh, well, that's a big. I can send lots of articles and
Great.
Translate it. I'm happy to do that. Just send me. I can overload you, but there is a discipline to this work. It works locally. I can send you case studies.
Bill, if you have a summary output that you use sort of like over and over again for other people, you can send that to me and I can put it on the Slack thread for the.
Yeah, why don't I do that? I'll just send you a whole bunch of stuff, and you know,
Sure.
some of them be meaningful to you, and just scan them, or well, you can do what you will with them.
I'll put it all up there, and I'll let everyone have their own discernment, and they can go through it as they like as well. Dr. Brian, would that work for you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much, and just make sure it's in the Slack, and I'll access it that way.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would love to because you know, I got to say, Bill's got a lot of really good talks on the YouTube, and like I don't know if you've got a list of your favorites or anything, Bill, but it'd be great to get.
I'll send you a Word document with the better videos in them.
That would be helpful. Because I mean, one of the things and one of the reasons I wanted to have you come join us, and again, thanks so much for doing it, is I mean, I find your conversation, your descriptions of the cases, like the food co-op in Vermont and things like that, like really helpful at just kind of getting my head around how the thinking has to transform, from I feel like, that regeneration is a paradigmatic shift, and then Sage keeps talking about iterative approaches. And like, do you iteratively approach a paradigmatic shift? Then it's like, well, I don't know any other way to get there. So I kind of spin around in circles a lot. And so your case studies I find really helpful at kind of, you iteratively get to something that's fundamentally different.
Right. Well, and we're starting with the principles. So I'll send an article on the 7 principles that we use to guide our practice. If you hold those principles, you'll get there. And I mean, I've got lots of blood on my bloody forehead from hitting my head against a wall and learning. The one thing that I'm most proud about is that I'm kind of fearless and just say, well, let's just go for it. It's important. We're going to figure it out. So don't ask permission, just go for it. And you'll figure it out. We didn't know when we started Regenesis, we really did not know where we were going. We didn't know how to do this work in terms of place. So just dive in, but happy to ease the pain. That's
when I started going down the regeneration pathway, one of the things I sort of stumbled across is all the different frameworks that are out there, from the Cinefin framework to, do you do the permaculture, and do you a hybrid approach or a bastard approach, or how do you take all these things and take the nuance from some of those and still have those things work together? And what Rick described as a micro discussion framework, where you have iterative feedback from ChatGPT, that's a nuanced discussion every time. I built something just like that as well. And it was really difficult to go through a lot of that and try to figure out what's important and what's not. So going back on this, and maybe cart before the horse, look at your 7 principles and see how well I did there. I think will be a very good litmus test to see what I built and whether it was actually viable or helpful for a lot of the community. So I think any of the information you send across will be very, very helpful for all of us.
Good, great.
Rick, go ahead. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I have a question for Brian, if he's still there, because it's relevant, I think. The book club you were going to set up, Stella, you said you read the book 3 times and highly recommended it. Could you chime in on that one? Because it captured my attention. If you're still there, Brian.
The book is stellar, and it's by Tony Seba and James Arbib. And the book club is being run by Herb Simmons out of Washington, D.C. He's with Healthy Climate Action Coalition, Healthy Planet. HPAC.
Is a book? How far are you into the book club? I thought it was your book club. I didn't realize it was somebody else's book club.
They're just starting now, and we have 4 weeks to read it, and our meeting will be in 4 weeks. So I'm happy to talk about it with you in the meantime.
Who's the author?
James Arbib and Tony Seba.
Can you put that in the chat? If you have a link, that'd be great.
I'm on my phone, so maybe somebody else.
Not to worry. No, that's fine.
I just did it. I put it in chat. I got you guys.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, guys. I think we're going to wrap up unless there's any final questions for Mr. Reed here. Otherwise, unless I see.
By the way, that's probably the 7th time anybody's called me Mr. I'm Bill. You don't.
My grandmother grew up on Lookout Mountain, Tennessee, and she would jump out of the grave and slap me on the back of the head if I wasn't formal enough.
Then to honor your grandmother, you can call me Mr.
I've got a quick question. I don't know if it's been asked yet, but I was wondering, Bill, if you're working on a really cool project, something you're really excited about right now.
Yeah, I am. Lots of different ones. We're working on integrating massive landowners in these, talking 20,000, 40,000 acre landholders in the Scottish Highlands right now, and Costa Rica. We're doing, this developer really isn't interested in his development per se. He's using it as a leverage point to begin to unite other large landholders in Costa Rica to create a web of regeneration throughout the country, which is pretty cool. So that's high leverage. And then working on a biodiversity measurement and aliveness measurement project, which, like I said, could be an oxymoron. in Brazil and Argentina right now. So those are the fun ones. And another project in Montreal. Anyway, lots of projects, but those are the noteworthy ones. All right.
I've been quiet, but I have picked up numerous gems, which I could recount, but won't. But I thank you so much. It's just that's so worthwhile for you to speak with us, and I know others will watch this later. So cheers.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Thank you, Mr. Bill.
Thank you, Mr. David. Thank you, Sage, David. Two Davids. Carl, Rick, Alex, Brian, Dimitar. Ben. All right. Bye-bye, guys.
Bill, thank you so much. Thanks,
Bill.
This truly was. Thank you, sir.
Good thing. See ya.
Cheers, guys.